So, 3 days ago, I'm walking home from work. Here he comes, pulls up on his bike, throws me 2 bags, and says, hit me up. I did him.
It'll give you samples, and then it doesn't matter if you have 2 years clean, 1 year clean, 30 days, whatever. They want your money, so we'll throw you a free bag, get you hooked, and then they're coming back.
The last time he texted me, I never answered, so I don't know, that was tough for me. He asked me for a ride, and I never answered, so I don't know, I would want to tell him, like, I would have given him a ride, and I would have loved to drive him anywhere just one more time.
When Stephen was born, we were 19, both in college. I lived with my parents for 2 years, and they were very supportive, and Stephen was a very happy, fun kid. He was, if you came over to the house, you had to take him outside to play baseball. All he ever said was outside ball, outside ball. And eventually we moved him out to Westchester when he was in 9th grade. So that was the start of some of his issues, because we made him leave his Havertown friends. So he did make some friends at Henderson and joined the football team, and but still spent a lot of time in Havertown with his cousin, at his cousin's house, and with his friends.
Before I didn't go one day without smoking weed or drinking. Mm-hmm. And eventually that just wasn't enough anymore. And
like someone introduced you to pills?
Yep, my cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Me and Steven partied together, smoked weed together, and got high together. Sometimes I feel like I have a big part of why he became an addict, because I was an older cousin and I started getting high first and allowed him to do it around me.
And the fact that mental illness in families was never spoken of, and there were things that you didn't know that families passed down to each other because it was a hidden thing. And in these days, we're trying to take stigma away from mental health problems, and our mental health problems have always led to addiction. And that's because the pain that people feel from their mental illnesses isn't treated properly or openly spoken of. And the pain is so severe, they're looking for any way to stop the hurt. And sadly enough, ours became better known because our oldest son was co-addicted and lost his job, had to leave his family. We didn't lose him by death. He conquered, or he didn't cure his addiction because it never gets cured, but learned to handle it, but had relapses. And the best way he could survive is by leaving us, leaving the actual places that he grew up and lived, and the people, and that's how we lost him.
He was out one night, and I was actually out myself, and my phone rang, and it was him, and he was screaming that his friends just died and needed me to come get him.
When I was 14, I saw two of my best friends die in a car accident. I was supposed to be in the car with them, and from that day forward, I didn't go one day without smoking weed or drinking. And eventually that just wasn't enough anymore.
At the ER, the security guard had to bring his clothes to him. While I was standing outside the curtain, he got dressed. So I would have never thought he would have anything on him, because he did not have his belongings. So, as we always did on the way to rehab, we had to stop for his his toiletries. So he wanted to stop at Rite Aid, at this particular Rite Aid, whatever. So we stop at Rite Aid, we go through and we get his stuff. He had first ran into Rite Aid before I did. Had no idea what he was doing. Had no idea that you could go to a pharmacy and buy needles. Nor did the cop who came to the Rite Aid. Had no idea you could just walk in and get needles, which is what he did. It was about 5 minutes before the pharmacy closed, and he knew that. So he ran in before I got in the store and got needles. When I went outside and realized he wasn't there, I went back to the bathroom. It had a deadbolt on it. So, and then I could hear him, and you could hear him snoring. I mean, it sounded like he was snoring, but he was not snoring. He was overdosing. A kid who worked there who couldn't get the deadbolt open because there's no key for it. It's literally a deadbolt, which I always wanted to go back and see if they fixed that, which I never did because I never went back in the Rite Aid. But anyway, the kid who was helping was with a girl who we called 911. I think Johnny was on the phone with 911. This girl texted her father, who was a fire chief, and he had somebody there, like the cop came first. He couldn't do anything about it. He was trying to kick the door in. Nobody was kicking the door in. He was going to call fire, but the girl said they were already walking in the door, so they did knock down the door, and he was absolutely dead on the floor. And I said, he's dead. And they said, yeah, but they got him back, and they Narcaned him, and they used Narcan once, and then they wanted to get Narcan from the pharmacy, but it's locked, which makes perfect sense. I had Narcan in my purse, so I gave him Narcan. So they shocked him and gave him Narcan, and he went back to Chester County Hospital. And when I asked him where he got the stuff, he said it was in his underwear the whole time. They did not make him take off his underwear. So that's where the heroin was.
I have two sons, and my youngest was actually alive at the time. He was not even 2 months old. I can't even tell you how quickly I had them in their car seats, strapped in the car. It's scary to say, but I don't remember driving there. Literally pulled my car up. I hit park. I jumped out. I screamed for my best friend to come sit with my kids because we weren't in a good area, so I needed somebody to stay in the car with them, and I just booked it. I had no shoes on. All my friends were standing out front. The one who found him too was there. He just said, "I'm so sorry," and I wanted to stay, and everybody told me to go. But I wanted to stay because I didn't want him to think that he was alone. I didn't want him to think that there wasn't family there. I didn't want him to think that anybody was leaving him. So I wanted to stay until the medical examiner, like I saw the medical examiner, and then she called it.
First of all, Judy, Joe, Alyssa, and our families are overwhelmed by the love and support that all of you have shown. For those of you who don't know what to say, there are no right words, but your presence here says it all. In speaking to so many of you and in reading the messages Stephen is receiving, we have learned even more than we knew before how deeply Stephen was truly loved. It is never easy when someone dies, but when you lose someone like Stephen, who had a full life ahead of him, it is soul-crushing. Stephen could light up a room with his smile. We loved hearing him laugh. He was hilarious, and he loved to dance. So many songs remind us of him. Most of you think he liked rap music, but trust me, if you put on a Cher or Mariah Carey song, he would sing it at the top of his lungs. And don't let him fool you, he loved his mom's country music too. He even gave his dad and Alyssa's music a try. Not sure if Dr. Dog was his thing, but he had so much fun at the concert. When Stephen was little, he loved baseball. You could pitch a ball to him for hours, and it was never enough. He was such a happy kid. We all loved to be around him. Funny story, Uncle Chris, Aunt Missy, and Stephen were driving to pick up pizza on a Friday night. Chris accidentally hit a cat. He pulled over and got out of the car to check on the kitty. Aunt Miss stayed in the car with Stephen and acted like nothing was going on. When Chris got back in the car, he said, "Uncle Tris killed a tat." He proceeded to tell everybody that he saw that Uncle Tris killed a tat. In the words of his dad, there will always be two things that remind me of Stephen. First will be his gorgeous smile. He could brighten up a room with that shit-eaten grin and those full cheeks, which he complained about on nearly a daily basis. That smile would often mask the pain that I knew he was feeling inside. Second will be his absolute love for children. I have countless pictures of Stephen holding a little one with his face up so close to theirs with huge smiles on both their faces. He was a sensitive, gentle young man. He was so proud to be a son, brother, grandson, cousin, nephew, and friend. He loved spending time with his family and playing with all the kids. He was always so happy to be around his family. He loved his sisters, Alyssa and Bella, and his brothers, Ethan and Hunter, so much. I'm sad that I will never see how great of a father Stephen would have been. Stephen was a huge Philly sports fan. He was so excited that he got to see the Eagles win the Super Bowl. He loved the Flyers, Phillies, and Sixers too. He was obsessed with Allen Iverson, Jordan, and the GOAT, LeBron. That was until a couple weeks ago when he decided not to come to Philly. So many of you have said that Stephen was an amazing friend who was always there for you. He was the jokester that always made you laugh. You could count on him to support you, and he inspired you. He would do anything for anyone. His friends said he was quick to put those he cared about before himself. He smiled through his own pain if it would relieve a little bit of someone else's. He has helped many people through their darkest times. Only wish we could have done that for him. If you saw the heartbreaking video of Stephen in the midst of his addiction, you know that was not the life he wanted. He never recovered from witnessing his friends' tragic deaths. He struggled with severe depression and tried so hard, but couldn't find it in his heart to love himself enough. For him, his family, and friends, there were a lot of tough times during his addiction. He tried his very best to beat this demon. Stephen Patrick, I hope now, while you are looking down on all of us from heaven, you are finally at peace and can see just how much you are unconditionally loved and adored. To Stephen, who now flies with the angels, I say it again. Your mom and dad love you. Alyssa, Bella, Ethan, and Hunter love you. Your grandparents love you. Your family loves you. God loves you. All of us love you. We wish you had found a way to love yourself as much as all of us here love you.
I really wanted to talk about Stephen because we did lose him to God, and he tried so hard to get better. And it's just heartbreaking. I don't know what the answers are, but I do know it can't be secret anymore, because the secrets don't help. They shouldn't be ashamed. And his began mostly when he witnessed a traumatic event with his friends. He lost 2 friends. He held them and watched them die. So he had all that pain to deal with, and he was only 14, 15 years old. So he had to find a way to stop the hurt. So he turned to drugs and drinking, and led him right down this road. And it's just too much. We've given up too much of our family to this kind of thing. I know people are working hard to try to fix it, but there's a lot that isn't working in the system. If they have a very severe addiction, sometimes they need medication to help get over that addiction. And there's people that say, oh, you're just doing one thing for another, and that's not true. So there's just so many things that need to be fixed.
And at first I really didn't get it at all, really. I didn't understand addiction and that it's a disease and everything about it. So I was very angry towards Steven when I first found out, and really just didn't understand what he was going through, why he was doing what he was doing.
For somebody who has a full-blown addiction, withdrawal management is much more tricky because the brain has been changed as a result of the disease of addiction, and the symptoms are more intense and seem to obviously be alleviated by the reuse of the substance. So in full-blown addiction, withdrawal management is crucial because relapse is so common during or right after withdrawal management.
He would steal money from me a lot, my parents, so I had a lot of anger towards him at first. But then once I got a little bit older and into high school, I learned more about it, and also what triggered him to start using, and learning more about his him having depression and stuff. I never knew that, so I kind of slowly learned about why he started using, and I learned more about addiction in general and how it changes your brain and it's a disease. And I think I actually had started therapy a little before he died, a few months before, because I was just struggling with anxiety with school, and also dealing with that was the same time that I was just talking about, where I thought he was dead. So that on top of school was just a lot. I was just worrying about him and worrying about school. Once I started learning about Steven's addiction, we became closer, and we got to a point where we didn't fight anymore, really. And we would bring that up and talk about how we always used to fight, and now it brought us together, and we were able to connect a little better.
It's perfect.
My name's Kenny. I started using drugs probably when I was 19 years old, 20 years old, when I had to suffer a traumatic divorce of my parents.
Our divorce was very tumultuous, and one day I was home, and the next day my kids had no mom, and I know that mentally hurt my kids terribly, and I have a lot of guilt for that. At the time that Kenny was going through his major struggles and in and out of treatment, His dad and I weren't speaking. We couldn't even be around each other. Your dad's girlfriend, Terry, was very helpful and instrumental in helping me to get Kenny to treatment and being the in-between person, as well as Mike Drace, his business partner. We spoke a lot. So that helped. And Ken didn't mind that his two close people were, but at that time we couldn't. So we had to support him in the best way that we could, but not together.
I never really did stuff in high school. I drank in high school. Maybe once or twice I used a hard drug in high school, but I was just I played sports. That's what I was about in high school. And then I went to college, and I was gonna do the same thing, play sports, yada yada, but it didn't work out that way. And then stuff hit the fan, and I ended up just following the partiers. I probably didn't start trying opioids until I was like 22. My first drug of choice was ecstasy after smoking pot, but I don't think pot is a significant gateway drug. I think it's more of a medicine nowadays, but yeah, ecstasy was the hard drug, and then it led to opioids. The first time I tried heroin, I was probably around 22 and a half. Yeah, probably like 22. And I did it because it was easier, it was cheaper, and it got me messed up more. And that's what I was searching for, is to get outside myself. I went to rehab 7 times, inpatient and outpatient.
Talk about Florida.
I went to Florida to a halfway house to try to get clean. I did do good down there for like 5 to 6 months, but the whole time I was trying to still get outside myself, doing other things.
Talk about that.
Stealing? I mean, I stole everything. I stole whatever I could. I did whatever I could to get the next fix. I didn't care who was involved. I didn't care who was in front of me. I didn't care if it was my girlfriend, my family, my sisters, my dad. It didn't matter. It's what I did, and it's what drug addicts do to get their next fix. There's no sense of feelings when you're in that addiction. You just go straight and do whatever you can to get that next one. Just going through the same cycle for too many times and seeing people die and just wanting a different life for myself finally.
Regarding my son, John Nicholas Candelory Jr., who died of an accidental opioid overdose in August of 2019. Melissa, or Missy as we called her, was one of my children's babysitters when they were young. So Melissa could speak to the type of person that John was and the kind of upbringing that John had. John was a beautiful person, had a picture-perfect childhood with a loving family of a mom and dad we've been together for 37 years, and a loving, beautiful 24-year-old sister. We noticed something was wrong when John came home from his junior year of college. I was finding little bags around the house, and I was actually Googling to see what they were. I had no idea. And, he was working for a landscaper at the time, and in the evening he was sitting outside falling asleep. And being naive, I thought to myself, my poor baby, he's working himself so hard he can't keep his eyes open. And that was when our nightmare began. John was stealing, he was lying, he was cheating the people he loved. He was in rehab more than 15 times, but could never sustain sobriety. drugs had completely taken over his life and changed who he was. He so desperately wanted to beat it, but he just couldn't. He would relapse after a while, and he actually had almost a year clean in the 4 years that we knew of his problem. And actually tried going back to college and relapsed again. But drugs are not the answer. And you may think you can try them, and you may think you're experimenting with them, but you could be that one that becomes addicted. No mother, no family should know the pain of losing a child. My life has forever been changed. And my goal is to share my life story, my son's life story, so that we can prevent other families from going through this.
A year ago today was one of the worst nights of my entire life. Around 11 p.m., Tim dropped me off at my house. Not long after, John pulled into the driveway but didn't make eye contact with me. Usually when he was high, he wouldn't look me in the eyes. I watched him pull out of the driveway and pull into the street and park. John wasn't living with us at the time, so I thought it was a little strange that he was at our house. I was getting ready for bed when I walked into his room and realized he wasn't there. I remember texting my dad and asking him if he was expecting John to be home. He told me he was staying just for the night, and my dad went to bed. I went downstairs and still no sight of John. I thought maybe he had left or someone picked him up. All of a sudden, a wave of anxiety and dread hit me I had never experienced before. I don't know how, but I just knew that something was not right. I went to the front door to look outside where John's car was. The car was off, and I didn't see anyone inside from my view. At this point, I decided I should wake up my dad to help me look for John. I went upstairs to wake him up. I told him I couldn't find John, and so we looked through the house. I went out back because there were a few times he would sleep out back if he wasn't allowed in our house. Finally, I said to my dad, "I'm going to go check his car." As I walked over to his car, I couldn't believe it. John was slumped over in his seat so much that his head was inches from the ground. My dad was a few yards behind me when I screamed out, "John?" At that point, my dad ran over and we sat him up and tried to wake him up. As I'm calling 911 in a panic, I run back inside knowing that we have Narcan in the house. As I run in, my mom wakes up and I said, "Mom, I need the Narcan now." She knew something was wrong as soon as I asked. By this point, my mom had grabbed John and pulled him to the ground to begin CPR. Not long after, the ambulance showed up and gave him more Narcan and continued CPR. It felt like 10 years. Finally, my mom looked at me and said, "He's gone. I know he is." I couldn't believe it. Just like that, he was gone. We drove to the hospital, they pronounced him dead, and we sat there around him for hours. He looked so peaceful. I couldn't help but think that he was no longer in pain. The battle was over. John was 25 years old when he died. Addiction is so powerful, and people are dying from drug overdose every day. Support those on the path to recovery. He had been in and out of countless rehabs. John wanted so bad to stay sober, but drugs have taken over his life. I remember going into his room searching for drugs and needles so I could get rid of them, or sitting next to him as he dipped in and out of consciousness, making sure he was okay. I had prepared myself for the possibility of an overdose death a year later, and I still can't believe I'm writing this. We need to do better. People continue to die each day from overdose. A month in rehab is not enough. Most rehabs are so expensive and inaccessible to people, it's a wonder they only help for a short time, if at all. Of course, this is not how I wish to remember John. He was funny, smart, enthusiastic, and cared so much for others. He was the best big brother I could have ever asked for, but watching drugs destroy his life is something I will never forget. John, we continue to share your story. Your battle has ended, but ours has just begun. I love you. Please watch over me always. Love, your sister.
I myself have battled with a lot of different addiction problems in my past and have been greatly affected, especially with a lot of different family members and friends. I'm now a nurse and I work in a rehab facility, inpatient. I see patients who come in the beginning detox phases to the end of their residential stage as well. We see our patients for typically 30 to 40 days. We have about 190 inpatient on any given day. Job is definitely not easy. I struggle a lot with, losing a lot of people that I've helped for a long time, that I see over and over again, and then find out that they didn't make it. And it's a very tough job, but it is also very rewarding because there are many people who do get to see the other side.
I would say I love him and I miss him. I'm gonna start crying. Sorry. The last time he texted me, I never answered, so I don't know, that was tough for me. He asked me for a ride and I never answered, so I don't know, I would want to tell him, I would have given him a ride and I would have loved to drive him anywhere just one more time, so.
I have this little yellow note from my father. He wrote it for me before I went to Florida to try to get help. It didn't work out that time for me, but I keep this note as a reminder in my wallet. Because family's a huge thing for me. They've always been very supportive of me, even though they showed me tough love and didn't talk to me at times. But they always loved me, no matter what. And that plays a big role in what I'm doing today and how I'm doing today.
My cousin might not have physically on earth overcome the addiction, but he's now free with God, and he's hopefully happy, healthy, and safe.
We share his story to hopefully help other people who are in this hell that we are in, or were in, because it is, you want to talk about an epidemic? It's an epidemic. And it happens to everyone. It's not, a junkie on the street. It's good moms and dads and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and good people. And it's a disease, and it's one of the hardest ones to beat, I think.
The year before Stephen died was the worst day of my life. I struggled with fertility for several years, and I had a daughter via IVF. So she was, I think, 2.5 at the time. I got pregnant on my own without IVF, and I was pregnant with a son. And at 30 weeks pregnant, I knew something happened. So I went to the hospital while on vacation, and I was told that there was no heartbeat anymore. I had heard that several times before, but this time was obviously way different. I was 30 weeks along. My baby was supposed to be coming in 7 weeks. It really was the worst day of my life, and I've been struggling with it ever since. A year after that, Stephen then dies. Stephen, to me, was one of my surrogate sons. I mean, I was there from the beginning, from when he was born and brought home from the hospital. I had been trying to be there for him every step of the way. When Stephen died, and I just wanted to have another child, I needed to have something else in my life. I know I had my daughter, who I love very much, but I wanted something else to not replace, but to fill a void that I had in my heart. My IVF failed. I did it twice in the summer, and then it was a couple months after Stephen died. I had decided to forget it. I'm happy with my life. I'm happy with my daughter. I'm going to give her all the love I can. And then 3 months to the day of Stephen's death, I found out I was pregnant again on my own. So now I have a miracle sent from heaven from Stephen and my son Wilson Cooper, and his name is Landon Wilson. And I truly believe that Stephen and my son Wilson sent him to our family.
Dear drugs, I have to leave you. Don't think it's because I hate you. No, it's because I love you more than anyone or anything in the world. You're all that matters. Not my family, friends, money, work, or school even come close to how important you are to me, and you pretty much have pushed all of these things away from me. Don't get me wrong, you were always there for me in my worst of times, but the relief was only temporary and caused so much more pain in the long run. When things were good, it was great. When it was bad, it was awful. I can't put myself through what we've been going through again. I won't survive. My best friend is dead for staying with someone like you. The more I'm away from you, the more I realize what is most important. My family is always number one, and you won't be the one to come before them anymore. Don't worry, I'll think about you every day. I'll want to call you, but won't. You'll always be part of me, but you won't define who I am. Steve.
No more secrets. No more being ashamed. They're good people. They're loving people. And we've lost too many. So the best thing I do is pray. That's the only thing that I feel I can do to help and support all the people that are working on a better way to treat addiction and mental illness, and to love one another enough to help and not turn your back on anybody that's fighting this battle.
So when I heard about the opiate addiction program at Immaculata, I figured, of course, I'm going to do it. I'm so used to giving presentations in schools. I do it with mental health, with opiate addiction, and I'm so used to sharing my story. It's easy for me going to schools, do assemblies, and share your personal story of mental health recovery. So when I started filming my family for Stephen's story and my brother's story, something felt different for me. This wasn't easy. This wasn't my job to just share my story and share recovery and hope. It was real. It was reliving my cousin's death, reliving the fact that we had struggled for so long, reliving the struggle I had with my brother, with his addiction. And I realized that I have a blessing with my family that we can share our story, whether it's mental illness, mental health, or the addiction and loss of my cousin Stephen, so that no one out there feels alone. And they know that this is real. They know that it's a disease, and they know that if they're struggling, that help is available and they're worth it. And they're not alone. I'm not going to lie to you. I did this for myself as well, because I needed to figure out how I could find peace with Stephen. Towards the end of his life, I just grew frustrated and I was over it. And I was so used to struggling with my mental illness growing up, and I forgot how much I struggled, how much I affected my family. And I had to sit back and realize that this was the only way that I know to let Stephen know I love him and that I'm sorry and that I hope he forgives me. It was my way of being a storyteller like I am, and sharing stories of hope and real stories so people know they're not alone and that there is help out there. So Stephen, this is really for you, from me, to let your story help somebody else. And recently I created a scholarship in memory of Stephen. Michael's Giving Hand is the organization I speak for in schools, middle schools, high schools, and I share my story of mental health recovery and also my brother's struggle and also my cousin's overdose. And I decided to create that scholarship because I felt like I had to do more. And we've actually raised $500. It was used to go into a school in Philadelphia. Proceeds of my book, The People You Meet in Real Life, do support the scholarship. And it's other incredible stories of people who have been through different things and just letting you know that there's hope out there. So if you're watching this, just please understand that you're worth the fight, that we love you, you're not alone. And through it all, somehow, there is hope.
24 years old, didn't think I'd make it here. But it's only cause my family, just to make it clear. Being scared of jail was always just a basic fear, cause I would dread getting locked up like Jamaican hair. And not just jail, literally, I mean my mind too. Cause being stuck in here is hell when you despise you. But getting locked up was a blessing in disguise too, cause sometimes you gotta lose your freedom just to find you. I remember eating Chi-Chi's on the block, then lay up in my hut watching TV when we got locked down, screaming out for God, he's nowhere to be found. Waiting for my friends to call, but no one was around. My family was the only ones to hold me down. I was filling up with tears, but no one's coming down. People say that got love for me, I don't feel none. But fake friends help you appreciate the real ones. Speaking of real ones, I lost 3 of those. While y'all are gone and I'm still here, man, I don't really know. Damn, cause I was supposed to be in that call with you. Damn, I'd do anything to talk with you. I called your name for you to stop, but it was just too late. Don't know if there was any other options. Y'all was on your way, and seconds later I seen 2 young boys make it to the pearly gates. And me and Shane fell into addiction, couldn't take the pain. It was the only thing we could do to mask the guilt and shame. I wish I never told you all those pills I claim, cause sometimes I feel like I'm the only one to blame. And I failed to live my life the way you want me to. Now I just keep getting high, that's what I just don't know how to deal with all the pain and strife. It's gotten so bad that I tried to take my own life. I could have overdosed 100 times and it didn't work, cause Lord knows that I tried. But no more, I'ma live like it was meant to be. And I swear to God that I'ma do it in your memory. Yeah, I know my God, and I got a higher power, but I only seem to call him in my darkest hours. Then I act when shit is good that I don't really need him. I lose that connection and I just can't deal with feelings. My baby brother, he got Down syndrome, but the kids like to live the world of those around in them. But I'm scared of what his future holds, cause use the word retarded everywhere I go. And this pair of eyes has seen despair in lives. Misguided minds go through harrowing times. I've watched the greatest people go from heroes and heroines to junkies on the block with needles and heroines. I don't know why God dealt me with this hand, and why half the world don't even understand. I hate the fact that I hurt the people close to me. I hate the fact that I feel numb emotionally. And now it's time to go away again, just to get it right. And now it's time to go away again, cause all I wanna do is feel love and live a happy life.